All right, today let's talk about the Meze Poet. Somewhere around 2 grand plus or minus, as prices on these things are always fluctuating, sort of in the middle of the Meze line. Not at the Empyrean 2, not down at the 109 Pro. Sort of, they keep finding more strata within their product line to try to fit more and more niches. I think Meze has this sort of house sound that's somewhat smooth, very stable, very refined, and I think the poet shifts that and pushes that in some interesting directions that personally hit a little closer, honestly, to what I like. A little bit more alive, a little bit more romantic, just to use very soft, squishy adjectives. But yeah, it's been a really interesting listen to me. Um, if you know Meze, you know their formula: ridiculous comfort, top tier build, natural mids, smooth treble, and a kind of sort of easygoing musicality that's really satisfying. Pairs well with a lot of amps, blah blah blah. Meze headphones, tend to feel sort of controlled, maybe a bit elegant sometimes. Everything sort of perfectly in its place. I think the poet really keeps that DNA, but adds some movement to it. There's this slight energy in the mids and the upper mids that gives the sound some life. A sense of emotional lift that I don't normally associate with Meze. It still feels like a Meze planar, but it doesn't feel maybe as polite as some of the other planars. It feels like, I don't know, like you just sort of loosened up a bit and maybe you give a Meze a drink, and maybe it starts to sort of open up its vibe. So the build is pure Meze. It's nice materials, magnesium. I think this little headband bar might be titanium alloy. All the bits are nice. Everything's very beautiful, very jewel-like. The seams, the fit and finish is just great, and the comfort is amazing. I've always found Meze headphones to be really comfortable, but this one was like surprisingly comfortable, which is just strange to me because I've had a lot of Mezes over the years, spent a lot of time with them, but just the clamp, the distribution of weight, the overall weight of the unit, the way the ear pads felt, like everything was just. I mean, I literally did wear these all day. I wear them all day. Sometimes I forgot I had them in my head. The music would stop. I was doing stuff for a while, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm still wearing these headphones. So genuinely super, super comfy. They're a pretty easy load for most amps at 101 dB sensitivity. So you don't need a huge amount of power to drive them. I drove them successfully with solid state, tube hybrid, single-ended triode, just kind of the gambit of headphones. They do shift a little bit in their presentation based on headphone, or based on amplifier, but it's not dramatic. It's not like some headphones that are really telegraphing the amplifier or the DAC in a way that is just so sort of transparent and palpable. I think these kind of stay true to themselves a bit more. I will note that, and I'm a bit of a broken record on this topic, and I just kind of not. I want it to not be true each time I try this experiment because it feels so cliche to say it. But while I like the stock Meze cable and I found it very beautiful and comfortable, I do think that the Poet is a little bit rolled off with the stock cable compared to what I heard with a higher end, sort of cleaner cable. So I do think if you're getting this headphone, if you're ever looking to push it a bit and just pull out a bit more clarity, pull out a bit more energy, and I don't know if maybe one of the the Meze OCC cables or another aftermarket cable, whatever you want to go with, but like I do think it is worth sort of bringing that bit of, like, it's not brightness per se, it's just sort of better definition. Anyway, it's sort of be mandatory for me with this cable because it went from a little sort of warm and fuzzy to just a really nice balance. The bass is classic Meze, smooth, controlled, warm leaning, good texture and definition. It's not about slam. It's more about the shape and musicality. The mid bass has a little extra body, which helps with rhythm section and upright bass, and sub bass reaches, deep, but it's still in the polite realm. It's not gonna, pound your eardrums. I think the mids are where the poet sort of steps away a little bit from other Meze models. Vocals feel intimate and organic. There's a slight sense of motion that makes the mids more sort of emotionally charged or engaging than what I remember from some of the other Mezes I've tried over the years. Treble smooth, but maybe a little bit more lively than the total traditional Meze house sound. I think there's still no harshness here. This is still not one of these like forcefully sparkly, crispy edge bit kind of headphones. Very natural, very, it doesn't draw your attention, but I do think I found a little more energy and a little more delight than maybe in some of my more recent listenings. The stage is not huge. I think it's actually somewhat sort of intimate in some ways for like an open back. But inside that space, the imaging is very nice. It's very layered. It's very textured. It's pretty precise. Like you have a good sense of sort of the layout of things. It's just not like blasting it out, 10 feet out on either side of you. I think when it comes to dynamics, like a lot of the Mezes that I've tried, you need to push it a little bit. You need to push that volume up a little more maybe than you initially anticipated to kind of get that, to get it to produce some of the dynamics that are really engaging. Otherwise, I think it can still feel a bit sort of tame and controlled. And so if you want a little more grit, if you want a little more jump, then you do need to push it. It's not to say you're like hurting your ears to get there. It's just like, oh, this sounds nice. This feels like the right volume. And then you do a few more clicks and you're like, oh, okay, this is cool. I think the Meze poet feels like Meze sort of just like comfortable in what they've achieved and ready to like poke about and try some new territories, push a little outside of that house sound. It's not a massive departure. If you've heard other Mezes, you're going to be like, yes, this is familiar. I'm comfortable with this. I'm happy with this. But I think if, like me, you lean in a little bit towards the sort of emotional engagement with the music, and you're not just sort of like looking for pure like technical performance in your rig, and you're like, I'm willing to accept like some slight compromises in terms of like technical proficiency if it gives me more connection to the music, if it gives me something that feels more engaging and captures me, then yeah, I think this is actually a really compelling offering from Meze. I haven't heard the Empyrean in a while. I haven't heard, the Elite. I haven't heard the sort of top of the line stuff in a while. So it's very dangerous for me to like cite back to previous listening experiences. I do remember a sense of more sort of technical proficiency there, but I don't necessarily remember if I enjoyed them anymore. I really enjoyed this headphone. I was really happy to listen to it. I could really listen to it all day. And then if there was a passage in the music that was really like compelling to me, I just turned that volume up a little bit. I closed my eyes, and it would be a very rewarding experience. So overall, I'm pretty geeked on this guy, and I think it's a pretty cool part of the Meze lineup and the Meze story and its progression. So overall, yeah, cheers. Meze Poet, Signcraft signing out.